What's going on, everybody? It's Alex Chicola doing another one of these videos. I guess this is like a Christ testimony battle video number 2. I did the first one a couple months ago. That guy was so optimistic and happy and excited. I'll be honest with you, after I posted that video, life seemed to get a bit harder. The storm, at least in my head, did. And I looked back at that video the other day and I was like a little jealous of just that version's optimistic posture. But I guess, I really do believe in spiritual warfare. I believe in, like, at this point, the world as we see it is a byproduct of the spiritual realm. And I think anytime you start to talk about this stuff, the enemy is ultimately gonna kind of put you on notice and is gonna come at you. But they say to call it all joy, right? So this is after I did that video, which was very real for me, when I called out to God in a business storm, a perfect storm, a life crumbling kind of series of things. It was kind of like battle number 1. And while there's plenty of work still left to do inside the business front for the foreseeable future, it was kind of like I got this impression where God was kind of like, cute, now do the real one. So this is actually a video that I really don't want to do, and I've wrestled with it for a long time now. It's something I thought about even before I released the first video, because in truth, it's what I spent a substantial amount of my time initially seeking God out on. And in many ways, I feel like I can disqualify myself. And in many ways, I feel like I am a walking contradiction. And who wants to lead with that? Who wants to tell the world all of these things, especially the Christian world, for all my faith-filled friends out there? I know how condemning and judgmental and legalistic the church can be, and the people that are in the church don't want to be attacked by people in the church, much less the people that aren't in the church. Even though it always feels like it's being led with, we're gonna correct you with love. It just never, even in good intentions, things always feel kind of rough, right? So for those reasons, I don't even really want to do this video, but I feel like God's just, I'm, in some ways it's weird because it's like it'll sit on me and then I'll kind of just, it'll build and build to where it's like now robbing some of my mind space and robbing me a little bit of my peace. And I'm just at a point where it's like, all right, just rip the Band-Aid off and do this stupid video. So we're gonna do that, but before I effectively convict and confess myself to stream, I want to basically label it with an announcement first, which I think is really cool, and then we're going to talk about all the reasons why I should probably disqualify myself from potentially doing this, and why I should not be in a leadership position to do this. And maybe I won't be. Maybe I'll just help produce it. That's cool. I don't know. I have always, for those of you that don't know me, I grew up playing rock and roll music. One of my original dream was to tour the world as a heavy metal rocker. I started playing the guitar around 12 years old or so, and played in bands, and really rock and rolled through most of college until I kind of fell in love with business and the band thing just kind of fizzled out. So I've been working to get back into the music thing. I kind of tired myself out originally. Anything that I tend to put my heart and soul in, I'll kind of overdo it to the point where I'll just rob myself of the joy of said event. And music was my first casualty, I guess, of that. So I've been, it's certainly a gift. It's something I've been feeling like I should bring back. It's something I used to enjoy really doing. And I loved like heavy metal, screamo, rock, aka like devil music, as they call it. And it's not all devil music. Plenty of it is, I guess. But there's also a lot of, like Christian rock bands that embrace that sound and have kind of a more wholesome message. Well, anyway, I was thinking about this like maybe 9 months ago. I thought about like a heavy metal church or a heavy metal touring church. And there is one church that I've found in the Midwest that brands themselves as heavy rock and roll, which is cool. But I always thought, wouldn't it just be cool if there was effectively a church for all of the alternative kind of scene kids, with gauges and piercings and tattoos, that are listening to this quote devil music and by and large are, you don't typically see them in your traditional cardigan wearing church. And, Jesus came for all of us, and all things are through and for him. And I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had a heavy metal church? And I believe God works in mysterious ways, and I believe everything happens for a reason at this point. And I happen to live in one of the number one post-Christian community in the country per capita, meaning like least amount of Jesus per people. So I'm effectively in this kind of spiritual war zone, if you will. So I was talking to God about like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a hardcore metal church? But for the reasons I'm about to talk about, maybe that shouldn't be me that helps make this thing happen. And I've been thinking about it for a while, and I was literally I was like, all right, God, like give me maybe give me a sign or something. I ask for less of those now, because I've abandoned trying to figure out how the whole thing works. But I pulled up on the road to talk to this homeless dude who I know through the soup kitchen. It ended up not being him, just his doppelganger. And I was like, I was heading to church for this Bible study thing. And I ended up saying like, well, you're not who I thought you were, but do you want to go to church? And he was like, nah, man, I'm a headbanger. Like, you're a headbanger? He's like, yeah. I was like, cool. God, there's my sign, right? I literally got the sign the next day. And I was like, well, let's make a church for the headbangers. So I bought lifemetalchurch.com, and we're basically going to, we're putting together the band and producing, I guess, some of the, first followers of the idea, and, reaching out to maybe see like, who might want to be a pastor. I don't even necessarily know if I should be in the band. I think it would be an awesome event nonetheless. And if I do end up playing, I think it'll be a great way to kind of experience some of the music that I really loved that I didn't get to play as much growing up, and it'll give me an opportunity to kind of worship to God in a real way. So we'll see. Like I said, for those reasons that I'm about to say, maybe I should not be in charge of Life Metal Church, but we own the domain. Hail Jesus. And, I thought we could just basically rip off all of these death metal bands and do, everything that they do. Like we can, put the devil on a stick or something, and I don't know, just make it hardcore. It won't be a church for everybody, that's for sure, but we'll keep it Christ-centered, and we'll keep it real. So anyway, before I was onto my confession now. So before I was in God, and I certainly still struggle with these things. And anyway, I was super duper lustful, still am to quite a bit. I guess I was a bit of a womanizer, and I always, some guys just want to hit it and quit it. That was never my thing. I guess I wanted like a harem, like Solomon and all his, hundreds of wives. I guess I always kind of wanted that, in honesty. And when, let me say this before I continue. I hope that this word connects with some guy that is ultimately walking and battling with the same thing, because I know there's so many of us out there, just most of us aren't dumb enough to post it online and talk about it. So I hope that this connects to some guy out there and maybe sheds a little bit of light. Everything that I'm going to talk about and some of my reasoning, do not take what I say as truth. Do your own research, pray, talk to your own pastor about it. I think it's like Luke 17 or somewhere. It says it would be better to have a millstone thrown around someone's neck and drown than to make one of these little children, aka believers, stumble into sin. So I do not want to make anybody stumble into sin. Look at this as a disclaimer, okay? Talk to your attorney, talk to your pastor. Anyway, so, I met God through LinkedIn on business, and I had my first kind of God experience in business. And then after that, when I was like, okay, this is real, once I had a couple, coincidences just started to happen. And I was like, all right, you got my attention. Then I started to really seek out God. And one of the things that I noticed was June 16th was the day I prayed really loud and intently to God. And I don't know what part of the Bible it is, but chapter 6, verse 16, somewhere it says, don't you know that if you have sex with a prostitute, you are effectively one in like body and spirit with them, you're yoking yourself together. And in my experience, I really, I've loved multiple women at the same time. And I hope that for some of the women that I've been with, I hope this vindicates them in a bit. Maybe that's the right word. I want to put them in the highest light, and I want to, I'll take the low end side of things to be stoned. I know that I've what girl wants to hear these words? So, when I was coming into faith and researching this, for guys that are really into girls, most guys don't want to just turn it off and then go to one woman. And, the kind of large cultural norm and what we're just taught in general by society is monogamy, monogamy, monogamy. So when I was coming into faith and God met me in business first, I was like, well, I'm going to put a lot of time into this. So the fact that I prayed on that date that says, don't you know that if you have sex with a prostitute, not that I'm saying I had sex with prostitutes, but you are yoked with them in spirit, meaning every person that you've ever had a sexual experience with, you are spiritually yoked and bonded to that person. And, where I'm at today as a 35-year-old, this research has really cemented in my mind and in my spirit the actual sanctity of a godly ordained marriage and how important that is supposed to be. And I do believe at this point, one man and one woman, godly in a way that brought together via God, can check all the boxes and effectively, let you have your kingdom impact. But I came into God basically, with like a hodgepodge of mess and experience, and there's God always redeeming and untangling and unwinding things. And as of today, some of these women, I'm single now, and I've laid them all on the altar, because I feel like it was coming to a point to where, he said, like, shed it all. Like, everything in my life was just shedding, to the point to that we're rebuilt. And the whole concept of purity has now become, like, very important. But at the same time, if I'm honest, I'm open to my mind being changed. I'm open to my mind being changed, and many things have already been changed. I'm a very different person, and I recognize this is all in God's timing. But as of today, there's a few ladies that I still hold extremely dear and near in my heart. And, even though I'd say I messed everything up, I certainly couldn't afford them. Probably, I couldn't afford them financially. I couldn't afford them emotionally. I probably couldn't afford them mentally. And I don't, it was, if anything, it was messy, and it hasn't made anyone's life easy. And on the contrary, or I don't know if it's on the contrary, somewhere in the Bible it says, lust will effectively bleed you dry to the last penny. And I mean, who knows the impacts of the spiritual realm in your worldly realm. I know that if you're aligned with God, He'll always make a way for you, no matter what. How did my cat get outside? My cat's outside. I don't even know how they do that. Anyway, so, but when I came to God and I researched this so much, the cat's out the bag. So when I came to God and I researched this, I couldn't disqualify polygyny, which is one man and multiple wives. And, when I looked at, and trust me, I've read all the same Bible verses to combat this. We're our own worst enemy, and we beat ourselves up the most. This is really something you just have to take to God and let Him work from the inside out. It's only something He can really do. You've got to have a revelation. You've got to have a change in actual heart posture before you can repent. Otherwise, it's just behavior modification. And we all know that doesn't actually work. We all know that doesn't actually stick. So, but when I was researching this, we look at David and the case of adultery, right? And we all know how adultery is, and it's the case of adultery with David is with Bathsheba, right? That's another guy's wife, hooks up, gets him killed, has a baby. That's the instance of adultery in David's life. But they always, whenever the churches are yelling at people about adultery and sexual purity, they always remove the fact that that's like not David's first or only wife. It's not his first wife. It's not his second wife. It's not his third wife. It's not his fourth wife. It's not his fifth wife. So, I'm always like, well, why is the church why do they omit that when they talk about adultery so much? And when they're pressing monogamy, right? It's just a thought, right? And then when I get to Solomon, who is in the Bible touted as the wisest man to ever live, he's the byproduct of adultery between David and Bathsheba. So the wisest man to ever live, who is highly favored, and the richest man to ever live, is the byproduct of adultery, which is just kind of comical in a way that God is redeeming, the big mistakes, and He has a pattern of doing that with multiple people in the Bible. But then, I guess you could look at this from more than one angle. You could say that because Bathsheba and David's union was born in sin, right? Because they were born in sin, you could say that Solomon's exorbitant love for multiple wives and concubines was effectively like, I don't know, a generational curse, right? That just expounded and got bigger. Maybe not. I don't know. But what I do know is that in the Bible, it says that God told Solomon to not take foreign wives that worshipped foreign gods, because they would turn his heart astray. Meaning they weren't all sitting around singing Kumbaya to the same God, which made me think, well, what if they were? Would that have been the same issue? I don't know. Maybe not, right? And then you have to, like, these are just things that I wonder, things that I ask myself. I also see don't multiply horses and wives and kings, and leaders in the church should not have more than one wife, which is why I'm like, hey, I already feel like this biblical spiritual weight of this yoking, that even though God's grace and the blood of Christ redeems us, and there's overwhelming grace, I think the closer you get to God, the more you want to honor the law as a light to your footsteps. So, it's a roller coaster of emotions, and it has been like, things that I've truly wrestled with. And as of today, I've let it all go. I've put it all on the altar. I've consulted pastoral counsel about this. One of my local friends and pastors said, Alex, I think you have a good heart. I think that is something, that is a God quality. But at the same time, I think you're risking making God in your own image. So, you bring in agreements with God in conversation. It says to not make a vow. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't swear by heaven. And I've had some conversations to where, I said things to God, and then I felt God was saying, actually, put these things down, sacrifice them, like Abraham and Isaac. So, sometimes, I question the free will. Seems we have it. We can make the decisions we want, no doubt. But in a way, it feels abstract, because if God knows the beginning, the middle, and the end, He knew I'd be making this incriminating video, not incriminating, this confession video before I even thought to make the video. So if it says, hey, this cat. So if He knew every person and every experience you were going to have before it, and if all things are through and for to the glory of God and Christ Jesus, did He bring every experience and person that I've met and been with? Was that preordained? I don't know. It seems like you could make the argument that it was. And then, as Jesus said when talking about divorce, and it said in Genesis, like, let no man separate what God has brought together. Well, did God bring it together, or did you misbehave and you brought it together on your own accord? And that's probably the right answer, the latter. You're probably just me making bad decisions and bad mistakes. But at the same time, God knew I would do it, and it would be a way that he worked through me substantially. So at the end of the day, I really don't know. I don't think that you can biblically disqualify one man with multiple wives. I think more than anything, because God seems to want obedience, he wants all of you. He doesn't want perfection. I think that's a big challenge with people, is they want to get cleaned up before they come to God. And that's not how he wants it. He wants you the way you are. All your problems, he'll work it out with you. And I think he's certainly been doing that with me. But I think more than anything, he wants your heart posture to be correct. And only you will know that with God, right? That's only something that you and God will know. And Romans says that there's no condemnation in Christ. And while all things are legal, not all things are expedient. So, like I said, well, I'm single now. I've put it all on the altar. I'm waiting on God. I am going to work on my business because we have plenty of responsibilities to people. And my relationship traumas or problems don't need to take precedent over that, although they've robbed plenty of time in my mind. And like I said, this is truly how I really seeked out God initially. So, with that said, God loves you. Check out church. If anybody's interested in Life Metal Church, wants to go listen to us spiritually attack the devil and yell, "Hail Jesus," let me know. That's going to be, I think, a really fun opportunity. We'll see what my involvement looks like on that. But we bought the domain, and the cat's out of the bag. And God bless you all. Say a little prayer for me. Oh gosh, I don't know why I did this. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon. God, I did it for you. And go to church. Okay, bye.